Stand among the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro today, and the city feels almost too quiet for the streets are empty, the wells are dry, the baked brick walls sit under the heat, the bones of something enormous, something that lived for centuries and then slowly stopped breathing. There are no kings carved into the walls to explain it. No surviving temple inscription tells us what the people feared. Script remains undeciphered, their voices sealed away from us. But one part of the city still speaks with strange clarity. Not a throne, not a palace, not a monument. The drains. They run beside the lanes, beneath broken slabs, through the remains of houses, and across streets where thousands of feet once carried water, food, trade, gossip, sickness, and waste. And that is why Mohenjo-Daro matters. Long before germ theory, long before microscopes, long before anyone could name bacteria, this ancient Indus city seems to have understood a dangerous truth every city eventually learns. If waste stays too close to life, disease will follow. Most civilizations wanted to be remembered by what they raised toward the sky. Mohenjo-Daro is remembered by what it built beneath the street. Around 4,500 years ago, in what is now Sindh, Pakistan, this was not a ruin. It was a living city near the Indus River, a place of brick houses, narrow lanes, wells, bathing platforms, courtyards, workshops. Had to solve the same problem every dense city still faces. How do you keep humans close enough to build civilization without letting their own waste destroy them? Imagine the city before sunrise. The heat has not yet settled. A woman steps into a courtyard and draws water from a nearby well. A child washes sleep from his face. Someone carries a jar across a lane. Someone else sweeps dust from a threshold. Inside a house, water spills across a bathing floor, but it does not remain there. It slips toward an opening, drops into a small channel, and leaves the room. Outside, a drain runs along the street. Beneath its slabs, wastewater moves in darkness, away from the household, away from the floor where children sit, away from the well where the next jar will be filled. It is not dramatic, it is not heroic, but it is survival. Because if that water does not move and changes, a blocked drain becomes a pool becomes a smell. The smell brings insects. The wet ground softens. Waste creeps back toward the house. The lane becomes difficult to cross. A child touches what should have been carried away. A bucket is set down in the wrong place. A well stands too close to contain. Sickness does not need a name to enter a city. It only needs a path. The people of Mohenjo-Daro did not know this in the language of modern science, but they seem to have known it in the language of daily consequence. They built for movement, water in, waste out, houses connected to lanes, lanes connected to drains, drains covered, directed, and in some places built so they could be cleared. That last detail may be one of the most human the entire ruin. A drain that can be cleaned means someone expected it to fail. Someone knew dirt would gather. Someone knew water would slow. Someone knew the city would survive only if invisible labor kept the system alive. Public health does not begin with a hospital. It begins with the person who removes the blockage before the whole street suffers. Walk farther through the ruins. The pattern repeats. Brick after brick, lane after lane, well after well, bathing space after bathing space. The city does not reveal itself as a single grand gesture. It reveals itself as repetition, a habit made architectural, a civic instinct pressed into fired brick. This is what separates Mohenjo-Daro from the way we often imagine the ancient world. We expect ancient greatness to announce itself with statues and royal tombs. But here, greatness hides in maintenance. It hides in the fact that a house was not just a shelter, but part of a larger system. It hides in the idea that water had controlled before it became danger. The Great Bath, still one of the most famous structures at the site, deepens the mystery. We do not know exactly how it was used. It may have been ritual. It may have been social. It may have carried meanings we can no longer recover. But standing before it, even in ruin, you can feel that water here was never casual. It was contained, sealed, directed, given shape. The same civilization that built ordinary drains also built a monumental space around water at the city's heart. That does not mean Mohenjo-Daro was clean in a modern sense. It does not mean disease disappeared behind. No ancient city escaped the body. People still lived close together. Animals still moved through streets and courtyards. Food still spoiled. Floods still came. Wells could still be contaminated. A drain could still fail. A child could still become feverish before anyone understood why. Sanitation is not a miracle. It is a defense line. And defense lines can be crossed. That is what makes this city feel so real. It was not a perfect machine. It was a human attempt to hold back the consequences of crowding. At Harappa, another great Indus city, bioarchaeological evidence suggests that infection and stress became more visible in some communities over time, especially as the urban world came under. Be careful not to turn that into a simple collapse story. Civilizations rarely fall for rivers shift, rainfall changes, trade people move, power reorganizes. Disease lives inside all of those pressures. It travels with hunger, crowding, displacement, dirty water, and failing systems. A drainage channel cannot stop a changing climate. A well cannot save a trade net. A bathing platform cannot protect everybody when the wider world begins to strain. And yet, the drains remain. That is the haunting part. The city is gone, but the system that tried to protect it is still visible. People who cleaned those channels are dust. The hands that lifted the slabs are gone. The workers who noticed a smell in the lane, who cleared mud after rain, who repaired broken brick before water backed into a house, left no names behind. But their labor is still written into the ruins more clearly than any king's monument. This is why Mohenjo-Daro belongs in the history of epidemics, even though we cannot point to one famous plague and say, here is the moment it happened. Its story is older and quieter than it shows the conditions that make epidemics possible and the systems humans build to resist them. Disease is never only biology, it is also architecture, it is water, it is class, it is maintenance, it is the distance between a drain and a well, between a clean floor and a flooded lane, between the household that can keep waste moving and the household forced to live beside what the city refuses to remove. When people say ancient cities were dirty, they are often right, but Mohenjo-Daro complicates that easy judgment. It shows an ancient world not simply drowning in filth, but actively fighting it with the tools it had. Gravity, brick, planning, habit, and labor. No one here had a germ theory. No one could look through a microscope and see the invisible life inside dirty water. They could see what happened when water stagnated. They could smell decay. They could remember sickness after bad seasons. They could recognize that a city which fails to move waste away from it is a city inviting disaster back through its own door. And that lesson did not die with Mohenjo-Daro. It is still true now. Modern cities have science the Indus people never had. We can name pathogens, sequence genomes, treat infections, chlorinate water, build sewer networks, and map outbreaks in real time. But the old danger has not vanished. Whenever infrastructure fails, whenever clean water becomes unequal, whenever waste systems break, whenever poor neighborhoods are left exposed while wealthier ones remain protected, the ancient problem returns. Disease follows the weaknesses in the city. It always has. That is why these silent drains feel almost accusing. They remind us that knowledge is not the same as a society can know exactly how disease spreads and still fail to maintain the systems that prevent it. Mohenjo-Daro knew less than we do, but it built as if survival depended on water moving correctly through the city. In that sense, its ruins are not primitive. They are uncomfortable. They ask whether modern civilization, with all its science, always respects the basics as much as this ancient city seems to have done. By late afternoon, the light over Mohenjo-Daro turns the brick walls gold. Shadows gather inside the empty drains. The wells sit open to the sky. Nothing moves except dust and heat. It is easy to see only abandonment here, but the ruins are not just evidence of loss. They are evidence of. For centuries, people woke in this city and trusted that water would come, waste would leave, lanes would remain passable, and life could continue because unseen systems held the danger at a distance. Then, at some point, the voices faded, the drains dried, the city became a question left in brick. Mohenjo-Daro did not defeat disease before germ theory. No city truly defeats disease. It tried to outthink the conditions that allow disease to spread. It turned sanitation into architecture and maintenance, survival. Its greatest monument was not built to impress the gods or glorify a ruler. It was built to keep ordinary people alive. So when you look at the ruins, do not only ask where the palace was, ask where the water came from, ask where the waste went, ask who kept the channels clear when the city still breathed. Because sometimes the most important part of a civilization is not the thing rising above the horizon, it is the thing hid at your feet. If you want more forgotten histories of disease, cities, and the public health systems that shaped civilization, subscribe to the Epidemic Archive and tell me in the comments, which ancient city should we walk through next?